Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to go with that approach, and I'd be happy to work with you, Senator Wyden. We've been talking about tax reform, but this hearing is also on reducing the deficit and promoting fairness. So let me just pop up a couple charts here. Let's first talk about what I view as the primary problem is spending. The last 10 years, we spent about $28 trillion. According to the President's budget, over the next 10 years, we'll be spending about $47 trillion. So we're not talking about cutting spending. We're just trying to limit the rate of growth. That's the first one. Mr. Chairman, you've talked repeatedly about the 4 years of surplus, which was great. I mean, that's where we should be. No, not yet. You're getting ahead of me. But you're talking about the one side of the equation, when taxes did pop up above the 19 and for 1 year above 20%. But I think the real story, the flip side of that is in 1998, spending was 19.1%. The following year, 18.5%. And the next 2 years, 18.2%. So I would argue the real reason that we had surpluses is because spending came in line with historical revenue, which is about 18.1%. And now we're at 24% spending, and that's a real problem. I'd also like to dispel the notion, now you can go. During the Budget Committee hearing on defense spending, I tried to dispel the popular belief that the wars are causing our current deficits. This is a similar type of graph showing that the Bush tax cuts are not causing our deficits. The final year there in 2012, well, no, let's say 2011, where we actually have figures, our deficit was $1.3 trillion, but the Bush tax cuts accounted for $113 billion of that, less than 10%. It's spending that's causing our deficit problem, not necessarily the Bush tax cuts. And I really don't know too many people that are proposing tax cuts. We're just trying to forestall the possibility of tax increases that we think will harm economic growth. But let's go to fairness. I guess I'd like to ask each of the panel members just a very simple question. What do you think is the maximum percentage that the federal government should take out of any worker's paycheck? Out of any American's dollar of income, what is the maximum amount the federal government should take out of that dollar of income? Mr. or Dr. Berman.
It actually depends on what government has to pay for it. Our current rates are very low by historical standards. We could certainly raise marginal tax rates. I haven't.
Really, it's a very simple question. And with all due respect, please, just a percentage. What is the maximum amount that you think the federal government should take out of any American's dollar of income? Just the maximum percentage. What do you think? What's fair? Easy, just a percentage, a number.
It depends but it depends on the base. And the broad base, you could actually lower rates.
But what's the maximum amount should be in terms of fairness? What's the maximum amount? Please, just a percentage.
Well, Emmanuel Saez and Peter Diamond had an estimate that 44% was sustainable and was justifiable.
So you think that'd be fair? That'd be the maximum amount, 44%.
If we can't do anything about the base, that wouldn't be my preference.
Which would leave those individuals about 56% free.
No,
Dr. Rogers, what do you think is the maximum amount should be taken out of any American's dollar of income? The maximum amount, percentage. Simple question.
As a marginal tax rate or average tax rate?
Marginal. Out of a dollar of income, what's the maximum amount the federal government ought to lay claim to?
I believe it should be no more than the rate at which the incentive effects would be bad. So we want to stay below Laffer curve rates, which by the way, is 70 to 80% marginal tax rates.
So you believe that an American making a dollar should pay 80%, so be 20% free on that dollar's worth.
That's just the last dollar, though. That's a marginal tax rate. An average burden, we can do a lot better than.
Do you think that would create an awful lot of incentive to earn that last dollar then?
No, of course not. You asked a very hypothetical question about the maximum marginal tax rate on any one American. Like I can pick the richest guy in the country?
Okay. Dr. Mitchell, what do you think is the maximum amount that the federal government ought to lay claim on an American's dollar of income?
Well, for much of our nation's history, it was zero. We didn't have an income tax. And at the Cato Institute, we long for the days of a limited central government. And so in my fantasy world, it's zero. I will point out that just the other day, The Hill did a poll asking people what the maximum tax rate on the rich should be, and I think the number was like 30%. Which of course is lower than the current tax rates and certainly far lower than what the president is proposing. I think the academic evidence is pretty strong that if you had tax rates of 20% or below, you would be doing very, very little damage to the economy. One key thing to understand about the Laffer curve, the revenue maximizing point is the point where you're doing so much damage to the economy that you're losing this much taxable income and that offsets completely the effect of the higher tax rates. Why would we ever want to get anywhere close to where we would be destroying so much private sector income that the government doesn't even collect more revenue? And as I said earlier, I forget whether it was my testimony or a question, we've already seen in the UK that they're collecting, according to the latest data, less money at a 50% tax rate than a 40% tax rate. So I don't think the revenue maximizing tax rate, not that I want to be there, I don't think it's anywhere near 70 to 80%. I think it's much, much lower, especially in the long run.
And of course, Maryland they had their 2007 millionaires tax, which they projected would raise $330 million worth of income. It raised $120 million, 36%. Dr. Mitchell, you were earlier talking about the difference in revenue rates from 1980 to 1991. Let me just kind of give you some historical effective tax rates. In 80, the effective tax rate in the top 1% was 35%, and they paid 19% of the income tax. In 1991, the effective rate was 24%. It had gone down, but they were paying 25% of the total income tax burden. In 2007, which was the record year, the effective tax rate had been lowered to 22.5%. So it went from 35% in 1980 to 22.5%. The share of the top 1%'s income went from 19% to 40.4%, which, by the way, in 2007, that was the high water mark, the top 1% paid more of the income tax burden than the entire bottom 95%. I don't know, to me that seems like they're paying their fair share. And my concern about trying to raise taxes on the rich, again, is the minute we do it, the day afterwards, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle would be saying they're not paying their fair share again. I mean, at what point have we gone too far? That's it. Thank you.